It is a beautiful Sunday evening. Welcome in. I'm fresh back from the 49ers facility. They were back at practice today, and Elijah Mitchell and Charvarius Ward, Mooney, you should call him Mooney, not Charvarius, he explained today. His mom gave all of his brothers and sisters really tough names, he said, like, tough names to pronounce or spell or whatever, longer names. So he said that all of his siblings have nicknames, including him, and we already knew that he had a nickname, but that's the reason. And he prefers to be called Mooney. So Mooney Ward back at practice today, groin strain, all healed up. Elijah Mitchell's hamstring strain, all healed up. Both of those guys, both starters, were on the field for the 49ers. And it was really the start of bonus training camp today. Unusual schedule for the 49ers. They played Thursday night football to finish out their preseason against the Texans. Remember this Sunday last year. So this day last year, the 49ers played the Raiders in week 3 of the preseason, and that was 2 weeks away from the season opener against Detroit. Well, because they played Thursday night instead this year, they had those 3 games in 13 days. The 49ers had a 17-day gap in between the end of the exhibition season and the start of the regular season. Long gap, and that meant that Kyle Shanahan decided to tack on a block of 3 more practices, training camp style. And I wrote the practice report for us at The Athletic today. Elijah Mitchell, Charvarius Ward back in camp for the camp-like block. Remember, training camp is 3 days on, 1 day off. That's all they allow you to do in training camp. Well, the 49ers are doing 3 days on, 1 day off. Practice Sunday, that was today. Practice tomorrow. Monday, practice Tuesday. Wednesday will be off. They'll be back out there on Thursday. And then, with the Thursday practice after the day off, they are going to move much further into actual game planning mode. These 3 practices, they're not talking about the Bears. They're working on themselves. The 49ers, again, this is an extension to training camp. They're taking advantage of the fact that they have those extra 3 days. They're not particularly happy about the rhythm being broken up because nobody wants to wait 17 days in between the preseason and the season. But since it's already here and the 49ers have some work to do, especially on the offensive side of the ball, they're going to make the most of it. They're going to try to make the most of it. And then they'll go into game planning mode for the Bears once that day off hits. Once they come back on Thursday, they'll have about a week and a half to game prep for Chicago before the September 11th season opener. So anyway, this is the practice report. I'm going to talk about that today and a lot else. We're going to talk about Trey Lance and what the 49ers have shown, what they haven't shown, how this offense might evolve based on the clues that I've gathered at training camp or at these practices, because technically speaking, we're done with training camp. The hotel portion is over. The players can stay at their own houses, but they want to run practices like training camp. And then, of course, we have cut down day coming on Tuesday, the 30th, after this round, or actually after 2 of these practices. So the 49ers will probably make a lot of cuts and announce a lot of the cuts, I would think, before practice on Tuesday, because they are practicing at like 12:45 p.m. And I believe that roster cuts are due at 1 p.m. So you can't actually, you'd be breaking the rules by practicing with 80 men or anything above 53 men. You have to have only 53 for that afternoon practice on Tuesday. So it's going to be a busy week for the 49ers. And then we're going to kind of slide into Labor Day. And with that, hopefully we get a little bit of a breather so we can gather ourselves and turn our attention to the regular season. All right, turn your attention to the chat section, because I am copying and pasting the link to my article right there. It's up there in the chat section, so go ahead and check that out. Athletic.com. I don't know why my picture's messed up on the screen there, but you guys get the idea. Elijah Mitchell, Charvarius Ward return. Mooney Ward. Maybe we should start putting Mooney back into the headlines there so you can check it out. And obviously subscribe to The Athletic. Go ahead and do that right now. I believe we've got that $1 a month thing still going on for new readers. So I discussed a lot in today's piece, even though it wasn't a particularly coach newsworthy day. Shanahan didn't speak today. We had George Kittle and we had Mooney Ward up there, but both of them gave us some good stuff. And especially whenever you want to talk scheme offensively, especially for the 49ers, and, Shanahan's not up there, you go to George Kittle's locker, or you go to Kyle Juszczyk's locker. And today, podium, lectern, whatever you want to call it, because locker room isn't open yet except for after games. So locker room should open next week ahead of the Bears game, or 2 weeks from now ahead of the Bears game. We're 14 days away. both of these guys know the game. They both know how to articulate and talk about what Shanahan wants, what his vision is, and how he's going to apply it onto the actual gridiron, because they're both, important cogs in that 49ers machine from a blocking perspective, especially. The blocking is super complex. That's why they want athletic linemen. They're down blocks. You have to get out into the space, right? And the angles and the geometry of what Shanahan wants to do is so particular, even relative to a very particular league that's the NFL. I think Juszczyk and George Kittle are two guys who have been part of this system since Shanahan got here in 2017, and they both explain it really, really well. Well, George Kittle talked about Trey Lance today, and people are all up in arms right now about Trey's performance on Thursday and the offense's performance on Thursday. First of all, the 49ers had 11 penalties for 104 yards. Most of that's not on Trey Lance. The procedure penalties occasionally might be blamable on the quarterback, but I think we all saw the game and we saw offensive linemen false starting, and then we saw some holding penalties. I don't think the penalties were on Trey Lance in the game against the Texans. That really set the 49ers back. Trey was inaccurate on some of those short passes. He didn't set up yards after the catch as well as he's going to need to set up yards after the catch. But he was also playing behind an offensive line that was struggling in pass protection. But most of all, it was the damn preseason. And this is what I've been trying to say for days now. And I think that Kittle articulated it better than I have. He pointed out that, yes, it's the preseason, and it was a very vanilla game plan. I think it'll look a lot different when we actually spend time game planning. Now, here's one thing. I think that a lot of people, myself included, were led a little bit astray because the schedule was so different this year. Normally, and last year was more of a normal year, in a 3-game preseason, game 1, you play, just preseason, get everybody's feet wet. Game 2, you go through the motions again, and you don't play the starters a whole lot at all in game 2. And then game 3 is what we call the dress rehearsal. And in the dress rehearsal, you see up to half of the starters playing. For the Texans, it was even more than that on Thursday night. And it's called the dress rehearsal because you try to do what you're going to do in the regular season. The 49ers last year on this Sunday used that game against the Raiders as a true dress rehearsal. Remember, they were alternating between Garoppolo and Lance, and they had this grand plan of using both quarterbacks, and everybody was really excited about what Shanahan had up his sleeve. And then it all went to hell when Trey Lance chipped his finger in the game. And obviously, we didn't see too much of that plan. We saw a little bit of it. Trey Lance threw the season's first touchdown pass to Trent Sherfield. He ran into touchdown against the Packers a few weeks later. But basically, the dress rehearsal saw the 49ers offense looking really sharp on this day last year. And then they moved on into the regular season. Well, everybody thought, myself included, because Kyle Shanahan made us think, that they were going to treat the Texans game as a dress rehearsal again. They ended up not treating it like a dress rehearsal, and there are many good reasons as to why. It was a Thursday after a Saturday game, so they were on a short week. They only had 2 practices in between Minnesota and Houston, so there was really no time to establish and implant and just embed a firm game plan for the Texans. So the 49ers decided to sit 16 guys, including their starting offensive tackles. McGlinchey would have been out anyway due to injury, but no Trent Williams, who's one of the best players in football. There was a lot of talent not playing in that game, and then they only decided to keep the first-team offensive players in there for a couple series. And on top of all that, because they weren't treating it like a dress rehearsal, Kittle said it today, it was a very vanilla game plan. I think it'll look a lot different when we actually spend time game planning. Well, perfect timing, because team periods of practice, the part of practice when the 49ers actually scrimmage, are now closed to the media starting today. The last open, quote-unquote, training camp practice was before Houston last week. That's the last time that we as the media got to watch practice. Fans got kicked out a long time ago. It's been almost like a couple weeks since fans got kicked out, right before the 49ers left to Minnesota. But now, for the rest of the season, even the media cannot watch practice. We can watch the first 4 periods. First 4 periods are stretches, warm-ups, some throws against air. It's exciting. I like to go out and watch it to see how everybody's looking, but I can't really see what the 49ers are running anymore. I can't see who's lined up at the first-team left guard spot, for example, Jason Poe or Aaron Banks, because these practices are now closed. They kick us out after those 4 periods. Well, how does this relate to everything? Well, since team periods are now closed to the media, and the 49ers have no preseason games left, The next time that we'll actually see them running plays will be the regular season. So they could spend the next 2 weeks actually installing some of the good stuff, some of the stuff that's going to make them the opposite of what George Kittle said, some of the stuff that's going to make them not vanilla. And that is very, very significant. So these two things have coincided, that the 49ers can now get into the real meat and potatoes of what Kyle Shanahan and Trey Lance are going to run. And I even made a title for this. That means it's time for the 49ers to implement their full Trey Lance vision. What is the full Trey Lance vision? Well, George explained it in this article, which is why you should click on the link that I put in the chat section. He's got, there's paragraphs of explanation from George Kittle. I promise that he's good at explaining it, and it is worth your $1 a month, and it is worth the read. I'm not going to sit here reading quotes from George Kittle all day, but the gist of it is that the 49ers have a run-first offensive line, so a run-blocking offensive line in front of a quarterback who can run. And what's the one thing that we haven't seen all too much from Trey Lance during the course of the preseason and training camp? It is running the football. And for good reason. Why would you run Trey and put stuff on tape when there are fans watching training camp and filming training camp and media watching training camp? We're not allowed to film, but why would you allow us to report it all too much? They're running a ton of read option or doing a bunch of this different kind of stuff, triple option, whatever. Why would you put that out there before you actually take the field? You'd put yourself at a competitive disadvantage. But they haven't done it, but it's obviously a huge part of Trey Lance's game. That's why they moved to Trey Lance, right? Because Kyle Shanahan wanted to invest in a potential ceiling raiser for his offense, and that was predicated on quarterback mobility. Well, if you look at the biggest criticism of the 49ers from this game against Houston on Thursday, it is that their offensive line did not pass protect well. This is nothing new. The 49ers haven't pass protected well in the entire Shanahan tenure. Any advanced pass protecting metric and the game tape will corroborate it. Will tell you that the 49ers have been a bottom half team in pass protection. The reason for that is that Shanahan prefers the run blocking. He's one of the only two play callers in the league that's calling more running plays than passing plays. He likes to control game tempo by establishing the ground game. And that's not going to change moving from Jimmy Garoppolo to Trey Lance. The 49ers are going to continue running the football, and they're going to continue to have a run-first offensive line. The goal is to set yourself up in advantageous down and distance situations with the run so that you don't face too many pass-obvious situations. As soon as you get into 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, longer than that, it's a pass-obvious situation. All of a sudden, your offensive line, whose strong suit is to run block, has to anchor in pass protection, and opposing edge rushers know it. Shanahan's philosophy, and you can agree with it or not, I'm just relaying the message right now. I'm relaying what I've noticed covering this team throughout the entire Shanahan era. Shanahan's philosophy is that the edge rushing talent in this league and the defensive tackle talent with Aaron Donald too, who knows how long, if he'll be suspended, if he's suspended, but we'll find out soon. He thinks that the defensive line talent in this league, the proliferation of it, has outpaced the offensive line blocking abilities in this league. The 49ers have the one guy who could block anybody, and that's Trent Williams. There's not many other offensive linemen in the league that hardly ever lose if they're healthy. And Shanahan has seen quarterbacks get wrecked around the league. He's seen edge rushers take over the game. He drafted one himself in Nick Bosa, who the 49ers anticipate will have 20 sacks this year. It's basically the great equalizer, right? The 49ers are investing so much in their defensive line because, as John Lynch says, it's the great equalizer. Well, the 49ers don't want to be equalized on the other side of the ball. And they realize that if you go mano-a-mano, and just with a standard offensive line, pass blocking tackles, offensive line, you're probably still going to lose your share of battles against these great edge rushers, especially if you play really good teams. So Shanahan is trying to zag while other teams zig, and he's trying to run the football way more often than everybody else because he believes that, A, you could find a more cost-efficient offensive line if it's run blocking focused, and B, defenses, because they're so geared up against the pass, they're pinning their ears back, rushing the passer, they're lighter on the secondary so they could cover. He thinks the defenses won't be quite as ready to take on the run. When the 49ers fire on all cylinders, it's a complex game of firing on all cylinders, making sure those blocking angles are right. It's a matter of inches, right? It's really a matter of inches or even centimeters to, between a play that's blown up in the backfield and a play that busts out for a big game. But when everything is firing the way that it should, you get the NFC Championship game against the Green Bay Packers, January 2020, a couple years ago. You get complete domination on the ground. When stuff is not clicking completely right, well, then it doesn't look very good. You get blown up, you go into pass obvious situations, and the offensive line gets, it's a little bit lighter than your typical pass protecting offensive line. It doesn't anchor as well, and it looks rough. So there's a very fine difference between what works and what doesn't for the 49ers. And that fine difference yields massively different results. So the goal for Trey Lance moving forward is going to be to integrate with his offensive line and this system so the 49ers can do what Shanahan envisions them doing, and that's controlling the game with the run. And then in the situations where he does have to pass, raising the ceiling of the 49ers offense with the pass. Now, that's a big generalization, right? We can get into the nitty gritty, but the key for Trey Lance is going to be run first. That's the 49ers as a whole, not just him. But part of that run first strategy is going to be Trey Lance using his legs. And we tie that back to what we were talking about earlier when George Kittle said, well, yeah, this has been a vanilla game plan so far. And it's because the 49ers have not flexed their full rushing potential. Their full rushing potential now includes the quarterback. That doesn't necessarily mean the quarterback's going to be running 16 times a game. In fact, I do not advise that. But it means the threat of the quarterback's legs will change the way that defenses play the 49ers. And if the threat of the quarterback's legs, take a linebacker, take a safety, take a defensive end one way, and open up a hole that's half a yard bigger for a running back, that fundamentally alters the efficiency prospectus of the 49ers offense. And it's obviously something that they will not show and have not shown in the preseason or at open practices. So these practices are not closed to the media, and we can begin talking about what the 49ers might show us when they resurface out of this tunnel. They're in a 2-week tunnel now, installing all of the intricacies of Kyle Shanahan's game plan with nobody else allowed to watch. And they will unveil this on week 1, September 11th, against the Chicago Bears. And I think George Kittle explained what it's going to look like today. He said, well, we're going to have similar passing concepts as we did with Jimmy Garoppolo, is what he said. But our run game is going to be fundamentally different because the quarterback can actually run. There will be read option, but mostly there's going to be the threat of read option. And now the 49ers are going to have to walk a tightrope because you want Trey Lance to, you want that threat of the run to affect opposing defenses. So obviously he's going to have to take off with it a non-zero amount of times. But you also want to develop him as far as precision from the pocket because ultimately there's going to be money downs. And Jimmy Garoppolo, for what it's worth, was really good on money downs. The 49ers led the league since 2017. The 49ers are number 1 in EPA on 3rd down and 6+, or I think maybe even 5+. But pass obvious downs, when Garoppolo was the quarterback at the helm, the 49ers led the league in efficiency. So when the 49ers had to pass, Jimmy Garoppolo generally got the job done for them, at least at a higher efficiency rate than the rest of the league, right? So Trey Lance is going to be in those situations too. The key is to minimize those situations as much as possible with an efficient run game by eliminating penalties. But then when Trey gets into those situations that Jimmy was good in, that what Jimmy was really good in, Trey's going to have to find and brand his own way of winning. And that's when we start talking about the off-schedule ability of Trey Lance. Because this offensive line, we saw it on Thursday. We're not going to expect too much from these guys pass protecting wise, right? I've been the biggest critic of the 49ers decision to not invest as much as I think they should have invested in pass protection. But I could sit and yell and criticize them all day for that, and I don't think it's very productive. I'm just analyzing what they're actually doing. I've criticized that plenty. I lauded them when they got Trent Williams and Alex Mack. I thought those were big steps last year. But at the end of the day, Shanahan's not going to invest big in the guard position. He got Laken Tomlinson off the scrap heap. He went and got Spencer Burford in the 4th round. The biggest investment in guard has been Aaron Banks in the 2nd round. It's about player selection and development within the framework of that system, right? And at the end of the day, that's who the 49ers are going to have at guard. They're not going to go out and get somebody that, is trying to fit a square peg into a round hole that's some kind of great pass protector, but maybe hasn't blocked an outside zone before. They're going to pick guys who they're going to mold into their outside zone run game first and foremost. And then those guys are going to be counted on to pass protect on money downs. That's where the 49ers might struggle. That's what the preseason has told us, right? Burford, Banks struggling in pass protecting situations. The backup tackles struggling in pass protecting situations. They're going to need McGlinchey back, pass protecting better than School or McKivitz, right? At that right tackle position. And obviously, they're going to want Trent Williams, who's one of the best players in football. But either way, when you look 1 through 5 across this whole offensive line, they're not going to be world beaters in pass protection. Trent Williams might be, but nobody else has got that kind of pedigree yet. Maybe Spencer Burford establishes himself as that, but he doesn't have that pedigree yet. And I mean, you unlock whole new realms of 49ers offensive efficiency if they get to that level of pass protection efficiency. But they weren't there during the Jimmy Garoppolo era. They had to rely on his quick release to, beat a lot of hairy situations. He took a lot of sacks too because he wasn't the most mobile guy, especially after the ACL tear. Well, now it's going to be time for Trey Lance to inherit those probably similar challenges, unless this offensive line gets a whole lot better in pass protection really soon. And it's going to be up to Lance to win on those money downs. And he's probably going to do it differently than Jimmy Garoppolo, right? Garoppolo had the lightning quick release. Everybody talked about that. That was his strong suit. Trey Lance, he's got the escapability. He's got a cannon arm. He's probably going to have to run around a little bit. His escape rate already higher than Jimmy Garoppolo's last year, significantly. Probably doesn't surprise you. So the 49ers will have to get to the same result, offensive efficiency on third down, through a different avenue. Because Trey Lance has markedly different style than Jimmy Garoppolo. He's mobile, and he likes to air it out. Garoppolo, not as mobile, but much crisper in the short game. We have to find, when we analyze the 49ers, we have to find and diagnose a happy medium for Trey Lance. He needs to tighten the release, get better in the short game, while still accentuating what he does differently and what he does better. And we have to identify that spot. And then when we evaluate the 49ers and when we evaluate Trey Lance and the offensive line, we have to see how efficiently he is able to get to that spot of efficiency. So that's why today's practice, I didn't see the team periods, but I know probably what's happening behind the scenes. I know that they're starting to install more of those runs. I know the 49ers are moving toward this new method of efficiency, and it's super exciting to see if they're actually going to be able to reach it come September 11th. All right, so I have some footage for you guys. Charvarius Ward and Elijah Mitchell back at practice today. I posted these videos a little bit earlier, so why don't we watch some of them? Why don't we watch Charvarius Ward back at practice first? Make this bigger for you. Actually, what I should do, hold on. Let's go full screen. All right, here we go. Mooney at practice. This is cornerback 1 and cornerback 2 with Corey Undlin, 49ers defensive backs coach. So the reason I don't mention Jason Verrett quite yet is because JV is going to start the season on the PUP list, which will keep him out for at least the first 4 weeks. As we know, injuries happen. You can't predict where they're going to happen. You have to live in the now if you're evaluating the NFL, if you're running an NFL team. And in the now, that's your number 1 cornerback for the 49ers, number 35, and he's going to be the number 1 regardless of what happens with Verrett. What I'm curious about is where Mosley slots in if Verrett does return and everybody is healthy. I think Mosley has improved so much. He's got the size of the 49ers like at the position. Verrett is going to have an uphill battle to kind of prove himself. But again, injuries will happen, and there probably will be a natural place for Verrett to slot in once he does return from the torn ACL. It's to be honest, I don't want to say embarrassment of riches, but it's necessary riches for the 49ers, a team that last year after they lost Jason Verrett to the ACL tear just had a vacuum at the cornerback position. Well, these two guys pictured right there with Corey Undlin, they're going to help the 49ers not have a vacuum at the cornerback position. What's remarkable to me is both of these guys are undrafted free agents that went to college in the state of Tennessee. Charvarius Ward went to Middle Tennessee State. That's where Richie James actually went to school. And Emmanuel Mosley went to the University of Tennessee. But both UDFAs, and both have developed into Charvarius, one of the top corners in the game. He's definitely in the top 10, I think. And Emmanuel Mosley is a upper half corner for sure. All right, let's go to some more videos. Oh, there's my face. Crossover to Trey Lance throwing a rope. Why don't we watch this one? You guys will like this. Off the play action, 50 yards, ho-hum. Nice catch. This is Trey Lance at practice today, by the way. Threw a deep out here. His arm is strong. He's got arm talent. He also played a little receiver here. On the year anniversary of Trey Lance chipping his finger, they had him catching passes. I thought that was a little bit interesting. The QBs never catch these passes. They don't really bring in a receiver to make some of these plays. George Kittle will come over. But today they had the QBs out there. So Purdy was catching some. Lance was catching some. One more actually may go Lance's way here from Brock Purdy. Yep, he's going to Trey Lance. Touchdown. Got it. Or at least a first down for Trey. So this is the 49ers quarterbacks at work in unusual fashion. And hey, maybe they want to work on the hands for some trick plays later on. See Purdy's deep pass. He gets it down there, but not on the rope that Trey Lance got it on. And I think Sudfeld's going to throw one at some point too, after we watch a couple more from Lance to Purdy. They all catch with their hands, not with their body. So, I mean, they've all got the receiver form down. I don't know. I don't know if you want to carry Purdy as a wide receiver on this roster, so he makes the 53, though. I don't know if that's a wise decision. Sudfeld airing out the deeper one. And you could see the difference. I mean, Trey, he's got a rocket when he throws. It really hisses through the air when Trey throws it deep. The issue is the release and the short game for Trey Lance. I really think that his deeper game is one of the strong suits. We got a cool angle today of that's Bobby Slowick, by the way, in the white hat, 49ers pass game coordinator. We got a cool angle of the footwork drills. Quarterbacks were right near me, so I got some good footage here. Obviously, Nate Sudfeld, but Lance working on the footwork, Slowick kind of getting in his passing lane. So Lance has to work the arm angles to get the football out. That's something that Jimmy Garoppolo did well, is he was able to adjust the arm angle with his quick release to get it through the offensive line. I mean, this is all stuff that's important if your O-line is not a good pass protecting O-line. You have to be able to work through traffic and avoid bat downs as much as possible. And if you've ever been on the sideline of an NFL field, you see how much chaos there is, especially if the offensive line's getting overwhelmed. Arm angle is a very, very big part of things. And I think arm angle is one thing that Brock Purdy does pretty well. He did a lot of it at Iowa State. There's a lot of impressive arm angle throws at Iowa State. And I think the 49ers really appreciated the way that he played the position, despite the fact that he doesn't have the strongest arm. He's got a skilled arm. And I think arm skill is something that, mechanically, Trey Lance might be behind Purdy and behind Sudfeld. He has a stronger arm, more athleticism. He might know the playbook better. I mean, I hope he does better than Purdy because he's been with the 49ers for a year. But he has fewer reps. So it's about refining the arm nuances. And this is what this drill is for as we watch Nate Sudfeld working with Bobby Slowick. One more round for Brock Purdy working with Bobby Slowick. But yeah, so the 49ers quarterbacks were right. Oh, see, knocked it down. Not good. That's why you practice it. So even in a non-live situation, if that pass can get knocked down, it just shows you that it's imperative to make sure those arm angles are down and that the quarterback's reactions and reflexes are on the point where they can successfully get that ball past the outstretched arms of defensive linemen. Finally, Elijah Mitchell was back at practice. Make this one bigger as well. There he is, 25. Elijah Mitchell, hamstring strain, kept him out about 3 weeks. Looked like he was moving just fine through the agility drills for the 49ers there at the end of the field. I'm going to go through some of the other running backs here. Trey Sermon, second in line behind him. 49ers have been happy with him this offseason. Kyle Juszczyk, Jeff Wilson, Jermichael Hasty, Ty Davis Price, Jordan Mason, last in line. Mason, I would think they're going to try to push him through the practice squad. But there's Anthony Lynn, 49ers running backs coach at left. They've been happy with his performance so far. And all these guys, you could knock on wood because nobody likes injuries. But now that Mitchell's back, they're all healthy. Look at that. That's the full 49ers running backs unit today at practice. Looking good for the 49ers. The entire crew in one spot. This cut down day for the running backs is going to be ultra interesting because it's so polarized online. People seem to hate Trey Sermon, but they haven't really seen Sermon in practice. They've seen Sermon in these preseason games where he hasn't had much room to run. And because of that, they think, oh, well, Jordan Mason, who's been running against the third team, must be way better than Trey Sermon. But if Trey Sermon was running against threes in the second half, he'd probably also have a much more robust yards per carry. So you can't judge it that way. We heard Shanahan talk about Sermon, especially Lynch, and how well Sermon has run over the course of practices this offseason. And to me, he seems like he has a preferred spot on this 53-man roster. Ty Davis-Price just drafted, has a preferred spot. Now, where it gets a little hairy is you can only carry 4 of these guys, plus Kyle Juszczyk, right? If you take 5, you're really compromising someplace else on the roster. So where does JaMychal Hasty fit in? Because Hasty is such a comparative advantage. He's smaller, but he's, that big brick of muscle, and he can pass protect, and he's a third down back. So, I just tossed it out there. If you find a trade partner for Sermon, then you slide Hasty in there, and then Jordan Mason goes to the practice squad. Maybe that's what you do if you're the 49ers. It wouldn't be the first time they've traded a running back, right? They traded Matt Breida to the Miami Dolphins. So I think they want to sneak as many through to stay in the building as possible. So if you could sneak Hasty into the practice squad, which might not be possible, but maybe you do it. Maybe you use a roster trick. Maybe somebody gets hurt here in the next couple of days, and you do the whole 53-man, make the 53, put on IR, and then re-sign a guy with a backroom deal. You could do it with somebody like JaMychal Hasty. They're going to do that with Jimmy Ward for sure, and I talked about that yesterday, because he has to make the initial 53-man roster, so he's eligible to return this year. And I saw Jimmy today on the practice field, and he was doing some slow rehab work. If it is indeed a grade 3 hamstring strain, any strain or pull, I guess I should say, any pull is technically a tear. It's muscle fibers tearing. The grades of these pulls or tears are all dependent on how many of the muscle fibers are actually ruptured. And if over 50% of the muscle fibers are ruptured, it is a grade 3 tear. So that means over 50% of the muscle needs to heal for Jimmy Ward. And the report was from Eric Branch that it was a grade 3 tear. And if that's the case, it could keep him out 2 to 3 months. He's for sure, we know from Shanahan, Ward, going to be out for the start of the season. So what the 49ers will do is they'll have him make the 53-man roster, so he's eligible to return, so he's not out for the season. Then immediately they'll put him on injured reserve. And then what they'll do at that point is have a veteran who they tell before they cut that, hey, we're going to turn around and offer you a new contract 5 minutes after you're cut. Basically the same visit to the office. They're going to probably call the guy up, whether it be Dante Johnson, who's been, who's signed 14. I'm not kidding here. Dante Johnson has signed 14 different contracts with the 49ers since 2014. So whether it's Dante Johnson, Malik Turner, JaMychal Hasty, it could be any of those guys who have minimum deals with the team that, won't get complicated if they execute this, minimum non-guaranteed deals. You bring him up to the office. You say, hey, we're cutting you. And then you say, hey, but even though we're cutting you, here's a new contract for you to sign. Just wait 5 minutes until we put Jimmy Ward on IR to open up a spot. They're going to do that with at least Jimmy Ward and one player. I predict it right now. You come back to this video and thank me later. They're going to do that at least once. I'm not Nostradamus here. This is common NFL practice. We just have to pay attention to it. Will they do it at another position, though? Will they find somebody else that's hurt, somebody else that gets hurt here in the next couple of days, to be able to sneak another running back onto the roster? Because I think they like all these guys. I don't think they want to lose any of these guys. And I think Jordan Mason's probably the only one that you could sneak by onto the practice squad. Hasty might be tough. Last year, they decided they couldn't sneak him onto the practice squad, so they let go of Wayne Gallman. So what are they going to do this year? That's the big question at that running back position. All right, I see the comment section's blowing up. We got 201. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel. I'm going to wade over into that comment section here. We just passed the 33-minute mark, Charvarius Moore's number. And make sure you subscribe to The Athletic. Have the article right here up on the screen. I'm going to share it one more time for you. This is my practice report from today. Elijah Mitchell, Charvarius Ward back for camp-like block. And we talked a lot about Trey Lance and the 49ers vanilla game plan in preseason and how that might expand moving into the regular season. So it's a loaded practice report for you today. I just copied and pasted the link into the chat section. So make sure you go check out what George had to say, check out what I wrote, and subscribe to The Athletic to get there. All right, time to wade in, putting on the hazmat suit, going into the chat section, see what you guys are all up to. How's everybody doing tonight? Talking about Jim Tomsula. Oh, God. They definitely needed the hazmat suit for this chat section. Maybe I should just run at this point. As soon as the conversation turns to Jim Tomsula, 2015, 2016 49ers, 2016 was Kelly. That was Chip Kelly. But if the conversation turned into Tomsula, I don't think we're going anywhere good. Akshay can't believe that Seattle picked Geno. Well, maybe that's not their final decision. Maybe they're waiting to sign Jimmy for week 2. But, Matt Barrows and I talked about it today. At this point, would it be too late for Jimmy to show up in Seattle, even if they cut him in 2 days or even tomorrow? 49ers, and he signed with Seattle. Would he be ready to start week 2? He had a pretty quick turnaround in 2017 when he came for the Patriots to the 49ers, but it still took almost a month of, just acclimating to the new playbook. So you could protect yourself out there. You need to know the protections, and you can't just get, especially if you're going up against Nick Bosa on the 49ers front in week 2. So we'll see what Seattle has in mind. The whole Garoppolo thing, though, I think the whole league is just, playing this game of chicken with the 49ers right now. And the 49ers have been really open about the fact they plan to release him. I think they haven't said those words explicitly, but they've definitely implied it. Garoppolo hasn't gotten the playbook. He hasn't wanted one, but he's just been doing his own thing. Everything that has happened in this situation has telegraphed the 49ers' desire to release Jimmy Garoppolo, not have him take up a 53-man roster spot, or at the very least not take up cap room past September 10th. So the league can kind of just wait the 49ers out and see what they'll do. Now, if they carry him on the 53, then all of a sudden the league might be like, oh, will they carry him on the 53 past September 10th? Are they willing to pay him that money? Maybe that makes the league and somebody who's desperate like the Seahawks, if they don't really want Geno Smith, if the Browns actually want an upgrade over Jacoby Brissett, maybe that makes somebody act. But I just don't – I think the 49ers don't have that strong of a hand here. I think that the cap savings are a big deal to them. That's why they made, the primary reason they made this move in the first place was twofold. Cap savings, Garoppolo's injury history, right? So if they're congruent in their thinking and they're talking, then at some point they just can't – there will be a downside to carrying Jimmy Garoppolo. So anyway, Seattle, they're doing what they're doing. We'll see if Jimmy ends up there somehow, some way within the next couple of weeks. All right. You guys have any questions? There's like 500 comments, so I'm not going to go through the whole thing. So good questions that are asked most recently are the ones that are probably going to get picked. How comfortable do you feel with Hufanga starting? Every time I watch him play, I feel like he's always late to the play, and also see him getting run over pretty hard last game. All right, I know what you're talking about. There was a run, I think it was a 3rd and short from Houston, where Hufanga just got taken out by a big tight end. And I mean, that's the thing. Like, Hufanga shouldn't be taking on big tight ends. I compared Hufanga to Fred Warner coming out of college because they played instinctually similar ball. Their college tape looked the same, but I noted that Hufanga was like 30 or 40 pounds lighter than Fred Warner. Not that much, but significantly lighter, probably 20 pounds lighter than Fred Warner, which means that Warner's a linebacker and Hufanga's a safety, right? So the safety's probably going to get wiped out playing closer to the line of scrimmage if you get a big tight end or big offensive lineman on him. There are positional strengths and positional weaknesses. Hufanga's been learning how to play the robber safety spot, which is further away from the line of scrimmage. I don't think that he was particularly late to many plays. I think he was just on time on the big hit against Green Bay. I think that he isn't the fastest guy in the world, but he's got really good instincts. And I think the 49ers are impressed, to be honest. He's generated takeaways this offseason. You'd rather have an instinctual 4-6 guy than a guy who doesn't know what he's doing and running a 4-3. Let's put it that way with Talanoa Hufanga. If Purdy doesn't make the 53, does he get snatched by another team like Seattle? Who else on that cut line do you think would be picked up if they don't make the 53? A lot. So, I mean, let's look at the roster right now. I could open this up. Hold on. It's a good question. I'm going to make this bigger right now. I just have to set up the screen for you guys. That way I don't have to be full screen on camera the whole time too. I always like the roster's a nice life hack for a longer show. All right. Good question. I'm going to hide the question. Subscribe to The Athletic. That's going to be the message. Who else would be on the 49ers? Who else would get picked up? It's on the cut line. So let's look through it. Purdy has a chance. To answer your first question, I think that they would be able to clear him through waivers. That would be my prediction. Nothing's guaranteed, but that's just my prediction. And that's probably a risk they're going to have to take. They're probably going to have to roll the dice on a couple of these guys. As far as running backs, I think it's more likely that Hasty would get picked up somewhere else than Jordan Mason. You might be able to sneak both of them through, but I really think that Hasty would get picked up. Sermon might get picked up just because he's a recent 3rd-round pick, even though teams haven't seen much in the preseason from him. But Lynch and Shanahan have talked him up. Now, one reason they could have talked him up is because they might want to see if other teams are putting out feelers, potential trade feelers for Trey Sermon. And trade sermon. Trey and trade sermon. No. But I don't know. It's all speculation. I am very careful to always couch what I say when it's speculation. I, say, hey, this is speculation. And I do know this room is really crowded. Receiver room, I don't think any of these guys get picked up if the 49ers, Tay Martin, Willie Snead, Marcus Johnson, I don't think anybody, rushes in to sign either of these players. I think they will sign once there are, places that have openings later in the season. But I think if you wanted any of these three guys for your practice squad, you might be able to do it. Malik Turner is an interesting case, but I think he's making the 53 either through the kind of subvert method, right? An injury somewhere else, put the guy on IR, cut Malik Turner, bring him back. But they keep on talking about how good of an example Malik Turner has set just with his special teams, how he hustles. I think that's a guy that you don't want to yo-yo. Now, Dante Johnson set an awesome example as well, and he's been yo-yoed 14 times, so maybe that doesn't mean anything, but we'll see. 49ers worked out a tight end today, Dalton Keene. To me, it seems like that's more of a practice squad tryout because I think you've got either 3 or 4 tight ends that make this roster on Tuesday, and if it's 3, then it might be Dwelly, Kittle, and Werner. If it's 4, Croft might be tossed in that mix. They would have to have a really, really good tight end picked up right now that would knock one of these guys out because I actually think as camp has evolved, people have gone from saying they're not deep at tight end to, oh my God, they've got some decent depth at tight end. Linemen, I don't think anybody here gets picked up if they cut him. Jason Poe's interesting. Maybe a team is interested in him after he has really, I think, shined with his uniqueness. But I think he makes the 53. I really do. And if he doesn't, well, I think you get him through to the practice squad then. But because he's such a unique player that the league was afraid to draft him because he's only 5'11", right? He's shorter. Why would the league all of a sudden want to take a chance there? Why didn't they draft him a few months ago? He's shown everything that he had shown on the tape, right? That tape where he's running all those pass patterns, showing off the athleticism. You can tell he's got the strength of a beer truck there. He's shown all that. It's just realized itself within Shanahan's offense. So I think he's a guy you could probably stash, but you also want to reward good performances in camp. And, it's all interesting case, especially with Jason Poe, because he doesn't fit any of these prototypes or preconceived stereotypes. As far as the linemen go, they've got a lot of starting defensive linemen or, at least 53-man offensive linemen. So if you do cut one of these guys like Ridgeway, Hyder, or Teray, they're going to sign somewhere else. I said the other day, the 49ers defensive line without Armstead, Bosa, or Kinlaw is still better than a lot of defensive lines in the NFL. And that just means they have got a lot of guys here that would play elsewhere who might not make their team, which is crazy to me, which is why I think they might take 11. But if you only take 10, I think one of the guys that you let go is going to sign somewhere else. Linebacker, Flanagan Foles, does he sign elsewhere? Probably not. But he's so important to the special teams cog on your football team. Probably have to take him. And then in the DB room, third-round DBs, say that you waived Ambry Thomas, somebody's going to take a chance on him. He went in the third round. Somebody's going to say, hey, we're going to take a chance on him. I mean, even Ahkello Witherspoon had some value there toward the end. Seattle, right? Picked up Ahkello Witherspoon because you see the pedigree, you see the potential. You want to take a chance on him. So that's kind of the run-through of the 49ers roster at spots like that. Aaron V. says, Poe will be starting quarterback by week 4. Well, wouldn't that be fun? Wouldn't that be grand? Jason Poe starting at quarterback by week 4. They say he could be versatile, do anything. I don't know if they say he's that versatile. So if Poe, here, Mr. Corey asks, practice is starting earlier tomorrow, 11:38 a.m. They just moved it up. Hold on. I have to read this. Yeah, it's starting at 11:38. Updated schedule. 49ers practice tomorrow. If Poe makes this team, do you think that's a more surprising story than Jake Brendel making the team? Or, I mean, what aspect of Brendel are you saying is surprising? I get it. It's surprising, but in what way? If Poe making the team would be more surprising than Brendel starting at center because the 49ers predicted Brendel would start at center back in OTAs. That he was the early leader in the clubhouse. So, let's see here. King asks, Will Quantrez Knight make the team? I don't think so. I think he'll make the team practice squad. I don't think he's going to make the 53-man roster. Yeah, I appreciate the tips. It's just that there's literally like 500 of these here. Daniel Albizo. I see him right now. Will the 49ers defense be better this year and take the team to the Super Bowl? It's going to have to be. That's built into the 49ers plans. They need to have, I think, in my estimation, a top 2 defense. Because I think the offense, I talked about it at the top of the show, between the line and Lance and this kind of tenuous plan that they're having to navigate offensively. I think that the 49ers do need to have an elite defense this year to guide them, to be the locomotive that pulls the train. And they can't have a special teams unit that screws them up. And listen, there's a big difference between the number 2 defense and the number 6 defense. When Bosa got hurt in 2020, they dropped down to number 6. And that was a good defense. But the impact, you can measure these things with advanced stats like EPA. The impact of the defense in 2019 when they're fully firing and healthy was like 2 touchdowns per game better than the 2020 defense when they weren't healthy, even though they were number 6. There's a bigger gap, in fact, efficiency-wise, between the number 2 and the number 6 defense than there is between the number 6 and the number 20 defense. So if you're already going to slip to 6, you might as well just be mediocre. Because especially if your offense is hit or miss. Because you're not going to get anywhere. So you have to be elite if you've invested as much as the 49ers have invested defensively. They've invested so much in the D-line. Their linebacker room is brimming with talent. They went out and paid $13.5 million for Charvarius Ward. It is time for the 49ers to go back to the top 2 in defense. That's what they need. That's what they invested in. That's what they're banking on. That's what they need. That's part of the calculus. That's what I think is the formula for the 49ers this year. You guys talking about food? Pizza. What kind of food should Samer Farha get? Give him some recommendations. What kind of food should I get? That's the big question right now. Because I'm about to get going. I'm about to go eat. Thank you, everybody, for joining the show. You guys, I don't know if the chat keeps on going even after the video ends, but let him know what kind of food to get. And I am going to go get something good. I'm in the city now, so I can go get something really good. In case you missed it, I went to Sam's Burgers yesterday. I'm doing a bunch of shows, just walking around the city. I think you guys appreciate them. And if you do, then make sure that you like them and make sure you subscribe and make sure you go check out the places that I go look for. Minimum wins for John and Kyle to keep their jobs. I mean, they're not on the hot seat. So, I mean, if they go 0-16, okay, yeah, maybe something's wrong. But as long as you win a couple games this year, they have very long leashes here. Let's just put it that way. All right, everybody, thank you. Like the video, sub to the channel, sub to The Athletic, and follow along on Twitter and on Instagram. That's the handle, Lombardi himself. All right, everybody, thank you so much. Enjoy your dinner, or if you're done with dinner, enjoy the rest of your Sunday nights. It's been a fun show. 48 minutes of 49ers talk, just short of 49 minutes, but I don't feel like going an extra 40 seconds. Not this time. Everybody take care. Have a good night. Let's have a